Hello everybody, I'm Jimberrydev, and I want to show you how you can build one of these by yourself. This is I called it superhero landing floor, which was demonstrated by Grian recently in one of his videos. He made this on his storage, which seems pretty cool, and I thought I could do it, and I could show you how to do it. Actually, the redstone already in his video was pretty quite simple, but I thought you can make it even simpler and faster for that matter. It's still not instant, but it is much faster because the skull sensor is closer to you. So I wanted to show you how you can do it. The materials you'll need for these are at least 9 pieces of wool. The color doesn't matter. 1 calibrated skull sensor, 1 water source, I suppose. You'll need a redstone comparator, a composter, 2 sources of food that you can compost, 2 things that are compostable, so pumpkin pie would work pretty well. If you use something like seeds, you might need more, but yeah, you can use a lot of things for that. 1 sticky piston, 1 slime block, which are here inside, and then some observers. For that you have to see how many observers depends on where you want to build it. So depends on how the size it is, but basically you take the size of your build, you subtract 1, and then you multiply it by 2 to get the observers. Then you need pistons, half the amount of that. In pistons, you need some concrete powder for the top, whatever you want to use, or sand or whatever. To build it, you're gonna mark the spot you want to put your floor, and you're gonna dig 1, 2, 3, and 4 spaces. So you're gonna have this whole 4 spaces deep, and you're gonna find your center, which I think is this one, yes. You're gonna dig 2 blocks, and then from this space, you're gonna replace the walls using wool. So this, this, and this, and then lastly that part. You're gonna take your calibrated skull sensor and you're gonna place it there. Facing doesn't matter, but you have to remember where this purple line is. You're gonna put some water in it so that it doesn't create sounds. Okay. The water makes it so that we don't hear it making sounds. Then you're gonna go to the line, to the purple line, and there you're gonna take 2 blocks. You're gonna put your composter, your comparator, your composter. You're gonna put it to level 2. You have to see those green sparkles so that it works. To check that you have it on level 2, you can go to F3. And then on the right, you're gonna see level. You're gonna see composter, level. It has to say 2. This is so that the skull sensor only responds to us landing and not to us walking or doing other stuff, or for example the pistons firing. Then you can hide this part if you want, it's not necessary. You're gonna put a sticky piston on top. This is the part that is gonna tell us that the skull sensor was activated. Then you're gonna put a temporary block, a slime block. You're gonna remove your temporary block, and then you're gonna start with the observers. For the observers, you're gonna start doing a line at each of the crosses. At each of the lines of the cross, you're gonna make observers like that in all the directions. Once you have these 4 lines of observers, you're gonna fill the rest here. But to do that, you're gonna start by looking at any of both sides, doesn't matter. And you're gonna place the observers looking in this direction in a type of pyramid. So you're gonna do 1, then on the next one you're gonna do 2, you're gonna do 3, 4, 5, and so on until you reach the end. Then you're gonna go looking in the other direction and you're gonna start placing the observers, filling the rest. Now looking in this direction. There you go. If you did it correctly, then this portion of it are generally looking in this direction. These are generally looking in that direction. And then in the middle, they're gonna see at either the right or the left. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The effect is exactly the same. Then you're gonna continue, you're doing this on the other sides, for which, because I'm creative and I don't want to put that much time into this video, I'm just gonna use Axiom for this. Great tool, by the way, if you want to download it. It's also linked in the description. You're gonna do that. And now on the next layer, we're again going to put observers, but this time all the observers are going to look down. So you start just placing your observers like this. For this, again, I'm gonna use just Axiom because I'm creative. But yeah, you do you. There you go. Then you take your pistons and you're gonna fill the rest, the next layer with pistons apart from the block in the center. Again, I'm just gonna use Axiom here. There you go. All of it has pistons apart from the center. Then on the center, whoops. On the center you want to put a block. It doesn't really matter what it is, just like something. I'm gonna put one of these. And then on the last layer, you're gonna put your powder. I decided to put a light concrete powder in the center so that I know where to land, but it depends on where you put it. If you do it like Grian, where you have a clear hole from which you're gonna land, then it's not necessary really. So just put something that is concrete, some powder, sand, or gravel. And there you go. That's literally it. Now if you try it, it should work. There you go. If you just wanted to build it, then thank you for watching. See you next time. I hope. Here ends the tutorial part of the video. But if you also wanted to see why this works, then let me show you, because it is deceivingly simple, but not as straightforward as you might think. Because if you watch the Grian's video, you might see that he has more redstone. So how did I manage to make it so small and simple? Well, first of all, we have the comparator that he also has. In this case, I'm not using a lantern, but a composer, because it's simpler, cheaper, and faster, I suppose. But the idea is doing the same. What it is doing is it is reading a 2 from the composer, and then it is calibrating the sculk sensor that we have here with the 2. So the calibrated sculk sensor is getting calibrated to here for landing. If we take a look at the wiki, you might see there that the level 2 corresponds to just landing. So nothing else is gonna trigger it. Secondly, we have a piston on top with the slime. What the heck is doing that? What the heck was that? So let me show you. Whenever you have a sticky piston with a slime block and an observer in front, just like this, and let's put I don't know, a piston here to see that it is triggering. If this observer activates, the observer triggers. The observer sees that and triggers. If it retracts, it does the same, because again, the thing in front is changing, so the observer is gonna see that. But there is a funny bug that whenever the piston tries to pull something, if it pulls it correctly, then what you would expect happens. But if it can't, if it for some reason can't pull it, and in this case it can't pull it because it would try to pull this, and then the obsidian, which doesn't work. Crying obsidian is not pushable. So whenever it can't retract, then for some funny reason, it doesn't give updates. So the observer doesn't really see that. You can get some funny behavior with that, not only the observer. So for example, you have something like this, and then you put water here. The water is not spilling because this head is here. And of course, if I were to remove that, for example, by breaking it, then the water would get notified that there was a change and that it can flow. But if I have the system here that I showed you before, then for some reason, the head of the piston doesn't update nor the observer nor the water. So why is that relevant? And why am I using that here? Well, the reason I'm using that here is because we want to have a pulse. We want the piston, the observer here, to trigger on the start, on the, it's called the rising edge, but it's basically, if I trigger it, the skulk sensor turns on, gives an output, and then it turns off. If we just had an observer looking at the skulk sensor, it would trigger on the turning on and then the turning off. And we don't want that. We only want it to trigger once at the start and not at the end. What we had instead is this system here. So whenever you land, there is an update. So the observers get triggered, the observers do the thing. But when the power goes off and it turns off, it doesn't trigger again. So that's why we're using it. And we're using it, and the piston here in this case cannot retract because it would be retracting too many blocks. So that's how that part works. And then the part with the observers should be quite simple to follow. This observer creates a chain of observers that just spreads about. The observers on top see those triggers and then just power the pistons. So yeah, that's about it. Oh, also, how are the blocks not doing that? Why are the blocks not creating a wave whenever they're falling? That's just because of because it happens too fast. So the skulk sensor hasn't fully updated when this one already failed, which didn't happen for Grian.
And sends a signal into this piston, which pushes this wool over the top of the calibrated sensor. That's important because it blocks the sound of all the pistons going and reactivating the skulk and creating an infinite loop. So that bit's really important. But it took me such an incredible amount of time to figure out how to stop this constantly going in a cycle and finding the exact depth to place this.
That's why Grian had to block it, because Grian was a bit slower. So at the point where the first block was moving, the skulk sensor was ready to listen again for more landings. But in this case, because it's so fast, it's still on when this block falls. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. And also, if you just want to say that it's nice, I would appreciate that. Thank you for being nice and for helping the algorithm. So yeah, hope you liked it. Drop a like if you did. And bye-bye.